But we are naturalists and materialists, we atheists, and our life stances demonstrate an understanding of the beginning of things and how it all happened, the universe, the planet, and life on Earth. We know how fortuitous the process was. Our understanding is a path to achieving gratitude for the whole unfolding of being. Life did not have to begin and life forms evolve, and mammals did not have to survive, but it all happened. Humans managed to hang on to life and reproduce themselves repeatedly. These chains of births and deaths of each of our particular ancestors have culminated for a brief time in us. Somehow humans not only survived, they became endowed with the precious gift of consciousness at some point in our evolution. We can remember experiences and what we learn. We can enjoy nature, appreciate scientific discoveries, thrill to art, books, music, and laugh with joy. We can also be aware of our life and our vitality every second. We aren't grateful to a God or some other transcendent notion for giving us life. We are simply grateful for being here on this planet and that the natural process of evolution has made it possible. Our time here is short, but all the more precious for that. Religion's superstitious fantasies are hindrances to the enjoyment and the fulfillment we can achieve while we live. Here is what an Epicurean philosopher said to his readers. Receive each additional moment of time in a manner appropriate to its value, as if one were having an incredible stroke of luck. We can be grateful that his words have reached us from so many centuries ago, because the church tried to stamp out all traces of Epicurean philosophy. Religion hates philosophies which scorn death, which say that death is nothing to us. Religion hates philosophers that extol the pleasures of living. That I am able to repeat this Epicurean's words to you is an incredible stroke of good luck. Stoic philosophers do not believe in a personal immortality. I would like to close this lecture with the words of a great Stoic, the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, on death. Go to your rest with a good grace, as an olive falls in its season, with a blessing for the earth that bore it, and a thanksgiving to the tree that gave it life. Thank you for your attention. I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Yes, very good.
Very good.
I like it very much.
I love your prose at the end, Mary, because that's certainly, other than the quote, this is all original. This
Yeah.
is all original
Yes.
thinking. So
Yeah.
thank
This
you.
is pumping it out.
Yeah, once in a while I come up with something original.
All original prose. That's great. Okay.
I just don't have enough time, I think, to come up with enough of it, but
The Roman Epicureans, were they like teaching in academies the way the Greeks were?
No.
What did they do?
no, they weren't very popular at all. Stoicism really took over about that time.
But they were the upper
There
class.
were some Roman Epicureans, of course, like
Yeah.
Lucretius, and they had found a villa where there were a lot of but they can't, like a lot of the things have been charred, and they haven't been able to put them together again. Where there was apparently a very rich man with a lot of Epicurean philosophy and things.
But by then it would have been different than the Greek Epicureans in that they weren't
Yeah, it
teaching.
was a little more. It was a little more living high, except for Lucretius. So some of the writings are kind of like ribald kind of poetry and what have you. So it depends on each Epicurean. Lucretius was for real, but remember Epicureans were focused on living in their own garden and developing themselves and their friendships and their thing in a very private manner. And Romans were more focused on the state and developing the state. So the Stoics became very popular because they believed in a lot of civic works, running for office and what have you. And of course, because they believed in some kind of providence, the Christians felt an affinity with them and their works were not destroyed.
Hmm.
And of course, there were very famous Stoics like Marcus Aurelius, whom I just quoted, was an emperor, and there were others, like that. And so, therefore, their works were more apt to be preserved. But no question, the Christians felt much more of an affinity with the Stoics. We are very lucky that the Epicureans survived. what little there was of it. We're very lucky that they found Lucretius's work.
Tucked away.
Yeah, because
In a
he
monastery.
preserved like the philosophical parts rather than the science. You know, they kind of let Epicurus's science things, you know, survive, but they tried to wipe out all the philosophical ideas. And the science is useless because the science back then wasn't,
Yeah.
you know, viable at all. I mean, they didn't know what we know now. I mean, there was some things were just guesses.
They didn't have the observational techniques.
No, they didn't have the telescope, they didn't have this, they didn't have that, the microscope.
Microscope.
So their science was interesting, but not, you know, important. We have pages of that from Epicurus and hardly any of his philosophy.
But boy, when they had an idea like atomism, did they go miles with that?
Mhm, mhm. Yeah.
Yeah,
The randomness of atoms, the
I was
coming
impressed with
together.
that. He was wrong,
Yeah.
Lucretius, about a lot of things.
Well,
Oh,
yeah, I
yeah.
mean,
But I
because,
was
yeah,
impressed
they didn't
with
have,
what he
they
did
didn't have the
say.
measuring ability that we had, you know, the scientific advances, the techniques, the instruments.
Yeah.
But the concept of chaos and random assembly,
Yeah, that was good.
disassembly and assembly of atoms was very advanced.
But at least the Stoics did not believe in personal immortality. At least. But they did believe in a providence.
In your readings about the near death and the even both reincarnation and the near death, does anybody try to define what a soul is?
No, I don't think anybody
Do
has.
they just leave it
The
up to the
Christians
imagination?
kind of, yeah, it's kind of this entity, this little man, or a little
Little
thing,
man.
that's or something that occupies the body in some way and controls it in a sense, you
But
know,
does it
many
ha-
decisions.
Then it would have a memory of the previous life, or it would just be invariant? Is it invariant, or is it variant over time? this
Well,
soul?
you see, that's the thing, that, you know, when you read some of the philosophers and even some of the novelists, you're not really supposed to remember the past life. It's supposed to be like
Yeah.
brand new, and you can just assume that you did something bad if something bad is going on right now in your life.
Because it seems to me that all this emphasis on reincarnation and, near death is to try to preserve the idea that there is a soul.
Right, exactly, exactly. You
Well,
have
if
that
you bump
dualism.
into the Christian soul,
You have that
the
dualism.
Christian soul, then you're stuck with it. That's your soul.
But but it's still a soul, it's immortal.
Yes.
And without immortality, there is no soul then.
Right,
Right?
or
Because
without
everything
the
dies.
soul, there's no immortality either.
Without the soul, you'd have
Yeah,
to
but
have.
here comes, then God must have those souls tucked up there somewhere. And pulls it out, your soul, when it comes along, model number 842.
Yeah.
You know,
Because-
none of them make any sense.
But of all the theological objects and principles, this has always been the most puzzling to me, is that what is the soul? That they won't pin that down,
No.
and it's the most nebulous, the least defined that I've seen anywhere.
No, you're right. I do see things, but none of it makes much sense, and it's very nebulous, you're right.
And there's been doctors and other people right along who have tried to measure the soul as
Oh,
it
yeah.
leaves the body.
Oh, yeah, what was
Yeah,
that movie?
There's 2 or 3 of them.
The Wayne,
That,
the Wayne.
No, it was like, what was it, 20 grams or something? What
Yeah,
was that movie? There was a movie that had.
that was that based on what the doctor thought he observed. He would have all kinds of very sensitive scales on the body of people who were dying. And 20 grams is the average.
Or whatever. There was a movie called, and I can't remember how many grams it
20.
was or whatever. 20, was it 20?
Mhm.
You sure? I thought it was 20 or 30, I can't
20, yeah.
remember. But it's very silly.
And was it discredited?
No, not in the movie. It was almost like, and Sean Penn was in it, and I was really disappointed because I couldn't see how he could have like acted in a film like that. But it was like, no, you were kind of left with you could believe it or not if you wanted. And it was kind of tipped toward the point of believing it. To me, I thought it was a bunch of trash.
And
I
he
very
he
disgusted.
even wanted to it was when x-rays were first coming out and being used in the medical field, he wanted to x-ray the body so he could catch the soul coming out of it at the point of death. He didn't quite make it.
I'm also reminded of Star Trek, this is a comment, you know, the Star Trek had this transporter where you would.
Oh, yeah.
Good luck.
Be disassembled and
Yeah.
then reassembled.
There you go.
With this understanding that it caused you no harm and everything
Mhm.
you had before you still have.
Mhm.
So where would be the soul of that?
Very good, Nora, very
I think,
good.
you know, Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek, he was an agnostic or an atheist.
I think so, yeah.
And so I think he planted the seed of doubt in a lot of young people's minds that, you know, if you could actually break everybody up and then put them back together, well, then there really wouldn't be any soul.
You
There's
don't
no-
need a soul, yeah.
If this is an immaterial thing, where, you know, it doesn't matter.
Same thing with if you can put the brain into a new body
Yeah.
or something, you really don't need the soul anymore.
And why would the soul have to reside in the body anyway? If it was immortal, it could be up there and I could be down
See,
here.
that's it, well, it has to because it's animating you, I believe.
Yeah, but
And what if you get a lazy soul and you're born and the damn thing is still up there?
it doesn't come down.
Well, it
Yeah.
doesn't, I mean, because, you know, they use this for being against abortion and what have you, because you
Yeah.
have that soul the instant that the egg is fertilized.
But this is where neuroscience is gonna do wonders
It's
for
gonna kill
us.
'em, yeah.
It's gonna completely destroy the idea of a soul. I'm trying to,
They'll still believe it, they'll still
They'll
believe
still
it, I
find it.
guarantee you.
just
I wouldn't believe it.
put it in
Yeah.
its own little unknown
Yeah,
corner.
because
that
look
aren't
at,
known.
look at space travel and stuff, you know? And they said that they never saw any evidence of heaven or God or anything, right, you know? And then like some neuroscientist or a doctor of some sort that operated on people's brains, brain surgeon, to disprove that, he came up with that silly expression that for, I don't know, 30 years he had operated on people's brains and never seen a thought. So therefore, they might have been up there and never seen heaven or God. However, we know that those things exist. So you cannot beat imaginary things.
How do you confront, or do you confront, someone who says, I was on the operating table and near death, and I saw the light, and I decided to come back into my body? And this person might be an atheist, it might be a free thinker, but he's saying, or she's saying this. How do you confront them in your personal life?
You can only try to tell them about what the scientific research is, but from what I understand, when Dr. Kevin Nelson wrote about it, he said that apparently the experience is so strong.
Yeah.
It's very hard for even people that are scientifically trained to believe that they didn't have it. As you can see, this Dr. Alexander, you know, he was on Oprah's show and all kinds of things, and actually she was almost making fun of him. You know, I mean, the whole notion seemed to be so ridiculous to even ordinary people. You know, and he just sat there very calmly and said that, you know, he had seen this great light, he had seen God, and blah, 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 and, you know, and here he's a neurosurgeon. But Kevin Nelson talks about that. There's some kind of, he has other manifestations that people think, like that somebody's right behind them, and I forget what the physical reason is for that. But he said that somebody that he knew who was a trained scientist had, and the guy knew that it was, you know, like physical. But at the same time, it was very difficult because the experience was so real. So I don't know, can we even tell somebody that's had it that, unless they want to accept the fact that it was a scientific fantasy?
Because we have an acquaintance, and she said, how did she put it?
She quite believes it.
That because of her near-death experience, she's not going to say there is no God. That she experienced something so profound that it led her to believe that there must be some kind of entity out there because of her near-death experience, which had to have been real. And I just even mildly tried to confront her, and she said, well, you didn't have my experience.
See,
That
that's
is
it.
correct.
What are you going to do? I mean, it's unless they are willing to, like, listen to some of the scientific things that might have happened to them
Yeah.
during this thing. Even though it's very difficult to get their minds around it, then they might accept it, like Kevin Nelson's, the man that he knew that was, a trained, physician or a scientist. And the man accepted the fact that it had not been a real experience. A.J. Ayer had a similar experience, the famous philosopher, and who was a big-time atheist. And for a few days, until he came to his senses, he kind of was wondering about like what had happened to him and what it meant. And then so people jumped on it, the media jumped on it, A.J. Ayer thinks that there's life after death or something. So he quickly corrected, himself, quickly corrected the thing. But that's how strong the experience had been for him.
Interesting.
We've all had, or perhaps we haven't, but some of us have had dreams that when you wake up, you're startled
It's so
because it's so real.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You mentioned briefly past lives therapy, and this still, unfortunately, is still very popular
Oh, yes.
among the regression people. That not only you regress to your childbirth, but also to a past life where that's having some influence on your current
Yes.
personality, your current problems. Must be this past life
Yeah.
again. This is very alive and well. I've encountered individuals that unfortunately believe that.
It's very difficult to convince people that this is, not the case. I think that the only way you can counter it is scientifically, and as Ian Stevenson says, he's not even convinced that, Paul Edwards, I'm sorry, Paul Edwards says that he's not convinced that they're interested in science in the least.
Because that would disprove their worldview. That would
Exactly.
interrupt.
There's this little kid that I've seen on television. I know why people throw things at TVs and take their guns and shoot them, because he had a near-death thing when he had appendicitis or something like that. And wouldn't you know, his father is a minister and his grandfather, deceased grandfather. And now they've made a whole bunch of money. Have you seen them? Burple was their name or something, wretched. And he describes heaven, and he goes on and on. The Virgin Mary was teaching the kids Sunday school. I mean, hello. I mean, come on.
That's
He saw
funny
a
as
grandfather there, I mean,
It was a special guest appearance for her.
yeah, right, yeah. I mean, it's really pathetic. And yet, I still see the books when we, walk at Target and places, and they're
Still
still selling.
But the New Agers also have this idea of an old soul.
Oh, yeah.
That they meet a boy or a girl that says
Yeah.
something profound, and then they say, well, she's an old soul.
That means that they've transmigrated somehow, I don't know, retained, whatever.
Yeah.
I think some of the Hindus have that.
And
I
it's
think that's where
scary,
it's come from.
when you think of like the Dalai Lama and these other kids that are kidnapped and insisted, you are the reincarnation
Yeah.
of the first Lama, and now you are going to be
Yeah.
our next messenger,
Yeah,
and they don't have a choice.
yeah.
They don't have a choice. So it's very sad, and it's a dangerous idea as well, because after all,
Yeah,
they're
you're
just
right.
children. And then another New Age idea I've encountered is this cellular consciousness.
Okay, that one I don't think I've agreed.
That in our cells, each cell has some ability to be conscious, not fully like our whole brain, but a little bit, so that one sperm and one egg are seeking out each other.
Oh, I see.
Because they have this consciousness that say, yeah, this is the sperm that I want, that we were made to be together.
Ah,
But among the New Age hippie types, also even the childbirth community, it's like this consciousness is what brings the sperm and the egg together.
to create a child with Down syndrome,
Well,
or a
you
child
know,
with all kinds of
Thank you.
physical
that it was a
problems?
message, or it's a purpose. It gives even a Down syndrome child.
A purpose.
It
It's
gives
a
us
purpose, but
purpose.
there's a purpose.
There's a
My
lesson
God, my heart is
here.
warm.
to learn. So again, it's a dangerous idea. They've transformed the old religious and reincarnation ideas into this New Age
Yeah,
woo-woo stuff.
yeah.
It says, our cells are carrying around little parts of our brain.
You see, what they're doing is taking like little parts of, science, which isn't really science, but
Yeah.
sounds like it might be,
Yeah.
because they will not train themselves or even learn a little bit. See, so Edwards is right. They're not really interested in science. They just pick up things that some of these gurus send out like this. I haven't even heard this one.
What is it called? It's pieces? I can't read, I'll find for the next meeting, I'll find it. There's a phrase for it. Pieces of science.
Yeah, there's little
Pieces.
snippets.
Snippets.
Because there's a book, Conscious Conception.
Oh, Jesus.
And so, some of it has some good ideas, but.
Sorry,
but-
everybody, I don't believe in Jesus.
Yeah, but other is like the man and the woman coming together have to, be in the right place when they conceive, that everything has to be conscious, well-intentioned, so that the sperm and the egg can find each other, that it all has to be in alignment. That's
Is
the
this
goal.
what they
But
did?
that doesn't make
Wait,
sense.
they-
Where's the accounting of the overriding,
Yeah.
just overwhelming lust
Failures,
that can drive people?
and all of the sperms that don't get to make it.
Yeah, all of poor sperms. Well, they weren't meant to be.
We've never
They weren't meant
observed,
to be.
have these people ever observed through the electronic microscope,
Yeah.
the swimming of the little baby sperms
Yeah.
right after that egg, and the ones that bounce off the things and the ones that,
Right, but.
Well, that would mean that.
that's the
that
destiny.
there
That's
was
the destiny,
destiny.
the sperm destined to penetrate.
Yeah,
But it turns out that some of them do more than
There
one.
more than one does.
Penetrates the
That's
membrane.
true.
So that it's only a little later than one sperm is actually mixed with the chromosomes of the egg.
Mhm.
And the other ones, I guess, die off. But yeah, so there's this projection, this idea that, okay, these are the finalists. And now the egg or the
Higher consciousness.
Oh, makes its decision.
has to decide
It makes its
among the three,
decision.
whatever.
Let's see, I don't like this one. I don't like that.
So, who wants to be a millionaire?
yeah, right.
Can you give me a definition of theosophy and theosophist? Because this has come up
No,
before.
we've brought it up before. I looked it up, and you know something? I've forgotten it already. But I think that they generally believe that people are evolving to a higher state, and that there's like a higher kind of soul and consciousness. Actually, this is terrible of me because I did look it up to answer your question. And I seem to always forget about what I've read a lot of Krishnamurti, and he, of course, disassociated himself from it, but, I think this is evolutionary idea, though, that people can perfect themselves, among many other ideas. So I must apologize.
And what about Bridie Murphy? Because I remember my father mentioned that book
Everybody talked about it when I
in the
was a kid.
50s.
Oh,
he,
yeah.
he may have been even influenced by it. So tell me about Bridie Murphy.
I don't remember it too well. I could have told you more about it when I was younger because everybody was talking about it. But she apparently was a housewife, and she believed that she had this past existence in Ireland where her family
Yeah,
came from or
yeah.
something, and everything was pretty much disproved. I think that she had picked up some little bits of the language, and it had shown that people that they visited spoke the original, Gaelic or whatever, so she probably might have heard that as a child. Most of the things she had probably heard as a child.
was-
Write the book, or did somebody
No,
write
this
the book
guy
about her?
wrote, what's his name?
Book written about her.
Yeah, she narrated it, and I think he wrote it. Yeah.
But it leads me to this question about concurrent beliefs. That is, can someone be a Christian? You said that you could not be a Christian and believe in
Well,
reincarnation.
by doctrine.
doctrine,
And I think that
but
the
yet-
church would say no,
Yeah, but yet
Oh, yes.
we encounter these people
All the
who
time.
say, yeah, I go to church, but I also
Yeah.
have these other beliefs,
Yeah,
extra theology outside of my church that I also believe
Yeah.
equally strongly.
yeah.
So, I don't know, I don't think my father would have said that he believes in reincarnation, but I think he probably would have said he believed in ESP.
Okay,
So things like that, where if you're already inclined to believe in silliness, then you would also be inclined to believe in other silliness.
yeah, but don't forget, there are people who say they are atheists and believe that
Yeah.
they've had out-of-the-body experiences, as we
Yeah.
well know. So I think we're inclined to believe in silliness in general.
Just in general, it's the human condition.
Yeah, human condition.
Yeah.
It's like, it's very depressing, it's very difficult for real materialists to, like try to hold the line.
But could you go into more about what you think neuroscience effect will be in, say, in the next 10 to 15 years? How are they going to, how will neuroscience change these beliefs or narrow them down?
I think with the young, if they're exposed to them and if they're not watching, like, I don't know what, Grand Theft Auto or whatever, I think that they'll start to, understand more that there's not very much, supernatural. And that they'll start to understand that their mind is influencing their body, their brain. In fact, their brain is probably influencing their mind, as it were, or a great part of it.
Yeah.
Don't you think? I mean, I think I read that the millennials, about 30% of them are starting to doubt belief in God. So I think something is starting a little bit.
And what about drug use? People, I remember even in college, they would take mushrooms just to have the experience, knowing that it was the mushroom, of course, and not anything of their soul that was producing this.
But they like that feeling.
But so do you think that has a erosive effect on this idea of a soul or of a higher consciousness, that they understood that there was a chemical that was affecting their brain?
I think that they thought that they were connecting with some kind of universal consciousness.
But
a very good friend of ours was very heavily into LSD and what have you, and he was very intelligent. But he came from a Pentecostal background.
Yeah.
And he had this kind of sense that he was connecting with some, oh wow, he would say.
But what was the chemical doing that it was allowing them to connect to something outside of their body?
Who knows? It's just like the reincarnation theories or the resurrection. Because
the alternate explanation is no, the chemical is enhancing my brain, and therefore my mind, and I'm having new creative thoughts.
Well, I think he knew that, but I think that he didn't want to know it all the way. It was very thrilling to him to connect to some kind of universal consciousness that he thought.
Okay.
I find it very depressing, actually, that we can't get through to people, and that science doesn't seem to be able to get through.
Well, I think it's changing the debate.
It is.
I think that neuroscience is going to have a tremendous impact.
Yeah.
One is our understanding is that the mind is not constant. So to say that we have a soul is like, where is this thing? Because my mind at 20 is not the same as my mind at 30. My brain at 20 is not the same. So is my soul changing, or is it invariant? Is it never changing? If the mind is never the same each year, then how could my soul be the same and invariant? And if my soul is constantly changing, then why don't I remember my previous lives or my birth or whatever?
I agree, Norm. I hope that it will get through to people slowly. I think slowly, we're starting to discard a lot of silly ideas.
Yeah, let me see if I have anything else on neuroscience here. What about, in your readings about the near-death experience, some people say, well, as the car was approaching me, my life flashed before my eyes.
Yeah.
Has anybody researched what's going on at that time?
Yeah, they kind of have, and they think it's some kind of epileptic thing, or the brain starved, or it's some kind of brain reaction.
But it must be speeding up. It must be running faster.
Microseconds.
Is. Yeah, and remember, not everybody has that.
Yeah, but it happens enough that people say that suddenly time seemed to stop, and everything was running through my head about my children that I was going to lose, and everything, they'd be fatherless.
Yeah.
And the car hasn't even hit them.
Yeah.
So there must be some chemical in the brain that's speeding things up.
That can accelerate.
But what it is, they're not sure yet. They have a lot of guesses, like I read, but they're not sure yet. But one of these days we'll know, and that'll explain that kind of thing.
Because you hear about these stories of like women picking up cars when their toddler has been trapped underneath,
Well, I think the adrenaline there, I think.
So something
that
is getting
explains it. The adrenaline.
turned on there.
Yeah, you can get enormous strength from an adrenaline rush, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much been explained.
And then also related to near death is these, the pilots, the high atmosphere pilots would undergo a very similar phenomenon that the near death people were reporting, is because they were very low on oxygen and a high altitude.
There you go.
So their brain was getting starved because of circulation problems.
There, that's interesting.
And suddenly they go into this partial blackout. Here they're flying an airplane, they black out, and now they're hallucinating, you know, all kinds
I
of
didn't know
things.
that, that's interesting.
There was a book, I don't remember which one, but that's where I read this. This was so similar to the near-death experiences that I remember thinking, well, this is just like what they report when they die, that these pilots universally report this.
Yeah.
Because they are trained, you know, to be totally focused and totally alert and respondent, but yet they're fading out, and the tunnel vision and all of that.
Wow,
It's quite interesting.
I didn't know
Now,
that.
haven't they compensated for that now with the pressure suits?
Yeah, so the pressure suits keep the blood in the head.
Keep it
So you
going.
see,
Yeah.
that alone, I wish I had come across that when I was reading that, because they've replicated that experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's what Dr. Vivek said, is that parts of the brain that become oxygen deprived, remember, not all the brain would be equally affected by oxygen deprivation. Some would be more affected than others.
Right.
So the parts of the brain that become oxygen deprived are the ones that also would be responsible for our positional understanding, so that when we close our eyes, we still understand that we're in a sitting position, facing in a certain direction.
Mm-hmm.
All of those things would go away, and we would start to feel like we're floating.
Oh,
Ah, okay, very good.
So I thought that was very helpful, and all the other hallucinations.
That is very helpful.
No, that's a
The
good
tunnel
way to
vision
put it.
Yeah.
could all be explained by this lack of oxygen.
Yeah, well, that's, what a lot of my researchers were saying, the lack of oxygen.
And when we talk about, all of the studies by the biased researchers who are trying to prove there's an immortal soul, or that there's this out-of-body phenomenon, it reminds me of the circumcision researchers as well, is that if you design the study the way you want, you can show a
Yes.
result. And if you talk to enough people, you're gonna come across some evidence that you haven't been able to explain away.
Yeah,
So it's just,
exactly.
it's a sampling size, and the more you can sample, you will eventually find something that nobody else has found, or that cannot be explained, and then you can just repeat that. You'll find enough of those
Yeah,
by sampling larger and larger groups.
yeah,
But it's an illusion,
yeah,
because you are creating this enormous size to find the
very
outliers,
tiny.
the tiny
Yeah.
outliers, but you're creating the illusion based on your sample size that it's an enormous number.
Yeah, exactly.
well, I thought the soul had an obligation to stay with the body
Yes, it does.
until there's absolutely nothing.
Absolutely,
That
yeah.
you can tell when the body is dead, because the soul will be gone. That's very simple.
So this idea of soul also affects the attitudes about human nature, so that if one believes that one has a soul at birth, then you would believe that, well, then you are a certain nature, that your soul is in some ways determining your personality,
Right.
your nature.
See, that's it. It's that little man, like they
The
say
little man.
inside.
The little man is running around.
But sure enough, babies do have personalities.
Yes, they do.
Babies, do have talents or lack of talents in
Yes.
certain areas, as if somebody did plant something
See,
in them.
that's why it's easy to believe it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that, but now, of course, we're explaining that through genetics.
Yeah,
The evolutionary psychologists
Yeah.
are trying, the behavioral psychologists, talk about the first 5 years and how that influences, the outcome. Very interesting. So that's where I think that the soul was this idea of a soul sticks around because we need to explain human nature.
Very good
That we have a
point.
good soul or a bad soul, and, you know, we're gonna be punished or rewarded, but it's the soul itself that is the perpetrator.
Perpetrator of all
ultimately.
these
Well, that's interesting because we were taught that if you have bad thoughts, that you're working against your soul.
Oh, really?
Because your soul is there to guide you toward God. And you are not to, when you have bad behavior and so forth, you're going against the inherent good of your soul.
But what about the Calvinists then? They believe the other way.
Well, that's their problem. I wasn't a Catholic.
Yeah, you're a
But
Catholic.
so there's
That's a
two, are
Catholic.
there two personalities?
No,
then?
there's one.
I think there's two different interpretations, at least with Christians, especially Catholics and Protestants.
But then you're fighting with your soul?
No.
You said
the soul is, well, you're not really fighting with it, it's trying to guide you.
It's trying to guide you, but then you're doing something else.
That's
So
what
there's,
you should be doing. It's like a good angel.
but that must be that there's some other thing,
That's
the
you.
anti-soul.
That's you. You're against.
I think
you're
that's a
against.
Catholic.
That's a natural sin.
A little bit of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, original
That's
sin.
original sin.
Original sin.
Your original
But,
sin.
Yeah.
Jim, but tell me the name of this, you're saying it's you,
Yeah.
but it's not my soul, it's what? It's conscious, it's this idea of psychopathology,
Oh.
of psychopaths, is that even people like Steven Pinker and others say, there's this being called a psychopath,
Okay.
it's a state of being, and this being is so corrupted that you cannot teach them empathy or sympathy or any kind of emotion that would keep them from harming other people without guilt. That somehow they are free of guilt, and not only they're free of guilt, but they're unreachable as human beings.
Do you not believe that? I'm not sure what
This
I
is-
believe about
thi-
it.
This is stated as axiomatic, and I have found no solid evidence. I certainly, I believe there are people like this, but there's no solid evidence that they're unreachable. That would be like this evil nature, this,
There you go.
Well, then, how
this
come, I mean, I don't
anti-soul.
know that it's an evil nature so much as maybe a nature that something genetic went a little haywire. Remember,
See,
we're
but
very
you're
violent.
escaping into the soul belief then.
No, I don't think so, because I think, remember, we're very violent animals.
Yeah, so every one
I
of
mean,
us
as well
would be
as,
that
like,
capable of.
nice animals. Yeah, every one of us is capable of
Yeah.
it, but we have like cultural controls and what have
Yeah.
you that have, what
Or
if
we're
things
lazy.
have passed people by? And what if like there's something genetically screwed up?
But
Like some people have Down syndrome. What about people that look all right but aren't? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm not
What
saying,
about-
that's
Right.
just being bad. I mean,
So you'd say those are teachable people, those
Yeah.
people.
Well,
you
what if
could
they don't
reach.
want to learn?
Yeah, they may not want to learn, that's a good
Well, give a
point.
damn.
Which is really what I believe a psychopath is somebody
you
that
think
doesn't
that
want to
they-
learn.
oh.
You think
Okay.
of a guy saying, I don't give a damn. I don't want to learn.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
And-
interesting.
And what
All right, I'll
he and
accept
others are
that.
saying, I would like to do more research about this, but I don't have anybody on my side yet to say, this is a construct, this doesn't really exist, this person. There's just people who do bad things at certain times. But most of the time, even the psychopaths are not killing people, right? Most of the time, they're conducting themselves in a rational manner, and then occasionally
Well,
they
just
can-
so that they don't want to overdo it, because then, they might get caught.
Well, first of all, it's not my responsibility to cure him, to
No,
prove
but I mean,
that this idea is psychopathic.
you're telling me he's unreachable, he's reachable. How do you reach this individual?
I don't know, I'm
Oh,
not,
okay.
Good.
but to say it is impossible, requires evidence, more than just, well, I tried and I couldn't reach him. There
Okay,
has to be some, global rule, like you said, a genetic defect, which there is no gene, there is no psychopathic gene that says
but
this gene.
genes are very complex.
Yes,
I
they
mean,
are,
there's all-
which
so
would lead me to believe.
thousands and millions and things, they're showing all kinds of things now. So what if there was some kind of mix-up in the wiring?
But remember, what we just said is that these people most of the time act normally. That when they can get away with
Sure.
something, that they get away with it.
Yes,
So how would faulty wiring explain that?
why not? I mean,
Because
just.
they're functioning, they're
Well,
high
they're functioning, they're okay, but I mean, there's just a little boom,
See, to me, that's the ghost in the machine, that's.
Well,
you're
I
just-
don't mean any.
You're
ghost-
making up.
I don't mean a ghost in the machine. I mean, what if there's just the wiring is just a little off enough where that they function? I mean, I don't know enough about this, but I don't know if they're unreachable or not, but nobody's seen, you know, when I've read accounts, and the accounts get very boring after a while. Because honestly, they don't really seem to know why they're doing it. Some of the really smart ones have come up with all kinds of, you know.
Bird-brain
but-
theories.
Yeah, but most of them, you know, just really are giving accounts of like murdering this one and then murdering that one. And you realize that they don't really know why they've done it any more than the researchers after a while. This is my opinion.
But they enjoy it.
I haven't read, yeah, I haven't read enough because I've gotten so bored, I thought I would be horrified.
Yeah, but don't forget that each one of them behaves in a manner that does not put people on the scent that this person is a murderer.
Yes.
And sitting in front of me is gonna kill me.
No, but they don't know why they don't really seem, except the really more intellectual ones that have come up with some theories of their own, but basically, the more normal or regular ones, common ones, they just don't seem to understand their own motives really, other than that they enjoy doing it.
Mhm.
I can remember one where he was talking about strangling, and he would realize at some point people would kind of just give up their like give up struggling and just kind of give up. And yeah, he liked that moment, you know. He waited for that moment, but he didn't understand why, and he couldn't explain it.
And that's where I think we should approach this, is that we don't understand, rather than say, these people are completely off the ledge, or we can never reach them.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay.
But that they want to create this special category called psychopaths.
Oh, okay.
And my contention is that category doesn't exist, it's just an arbitrary. I'll give you another example, is the pedophiles, as they used to say, oh, these pedophiles, they don't, they're not attracted to women, they're only attracted to children.
That's not true.
But that's not true. But that was a common,
Yeah, I think it still is.
that was a common claim,
I think it still
that they
is.
were only attracted to children and that they were incurable.
Yeah, that's not true.
And both of those are not true.
No, that is
See,
not true.
So, but they're put in this own little category of, well, they're pedophiles, we can't even
But wait
let
a
them
minute,
out
I
of
think
jail.
some of them might be, because you notice they keep repeating the same thing.
That's where, unfortunately, they get their sexual satisfaction,
Yeah.
yes. But to say that they're
Yeah.
incurable, that's a statement beyond
Yeah,
what the knowledge would allow.
yeah.
I don't think it's
Yeah.
rational to say they're incurable, to say we don't have a cure.
Well,
To say
a lot of them-
cancer is
Thank you.
incurable
Yeah,
would be
it's-
ridiculous.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But to say a pedophile
Well,
is incurable?
No,
You know,
we do
yeah,
not have
some
a cure for it
pedophiles
yet.
only, you
Yes.
know,
Good.
do it once, and then you know, they're penalized, and then they don't do it anymore because they have enough sense, you know, like, you
That's
know,
not
either
much of a
they, yeah,
pedophile.
either they find out that it wasn't that much fun, or they find out that they're gonna like end up in jail, or some bad thing is gonna happen to them. But some seem to repeat it no matter how many times they're penalized.
And some make a big difference in the age of the person.
Yeah,
You mean that they select, or that?
yeah.
They will not bother a person under 10 years old
Yeah.
or 9 years old.
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
They'll only bother people
Well, now, see,
who are
I find that this
sexually
15, 16-year-old is ridiculous, because people were married at those ages, and they still are in many parts of the
When
You
you
have
world.
a
put somebody-
confession you want to make?
When you put somebody in jail
I don't
for
like their
having a
voice.
17-year-old male,
Yeah.
having sex with a 16-year-old female, please give me a break.
Yeah.
And calling him a sex offender, oh, please.
That's a
But,
terrible
You
thing.
see, this is the secular misunderstanding that happens when we're morally outraged about something, such as this underage sex, that it doesn't sit well with us. So rather than saying, oh, we don't like that, we say they have a sickness, or they have
Yeah.
a delinquency,
Yeah.
or she was abused in childhood, or she was
Yeah.
abused by her
Yeah, I
her
can't agree with
stepfather,
all
so
that
that's why
stuff.
she wants to have sex with other men.
I can't agree with all
And
that.
yeah,
stuff.
Doug Stanhope, he said it really well in his stand-up. It was rather vulgar.
I must
but,
have missed it.
You know, he said, it's not that she was abused by her stepdad, it's just, she just likes to fuck.
Yeah,
See?
that's it.
So, that's what I'm saying, without trying to trivialize the original abuse.
Yeah.
Don't try to link everything back to a pathology. See?
I agree.
Because we're acting on a lot of different influences, not just one thing that happened to us, in our childhood. So that's where I think secularism can fall into the same trap as religious people and say,
I agree.
well, I don't understand this, so it must be something completely
I see
different.
what you're
And we're gonna
saying.
put a label on it, and then we'll put it in its own
I
box,
see what
like
you're
the
saying.
soul.
I think we like to label things.
Yes.
Like to label things. and
Foucault talked
say-
about that. He said that was happening since about the Enlightenment,
Yeah.
where we had to medicalize everything and
Yeah.
categorize everything and put, we even kind of created homosexuality in a way, that category.
So
Not
according,
that they-
according to that thinking, every teenager who has sex is a pedophile.
Almost, that's what it started.
Well,
That's what they're
no,
saying.
Under the law, if
Under
two
the law.
16-year-olds are caught, then he's not going to be prosecuted. If a 16-year-old boy has sex with a 16-year-old girl, he's not going to be
But
prosecuted.
sometimes an
But they are.
18-year-old boy with a
There's a
16
case right now
There
where the
was a
guy's going to jail.
17-year-old boy, I think, and a 16-year-old girl.
Yeah.
I think because some states, they don't have 16 as the age of consent,
Oh.
or something
Well,
like that.
they use the age, let's take two 12-year-olds are
Yeah.
playing with each other. No, they use the age as a gauge. That's what one of the prosecutors says, that it's determined based on the age of the two people. Did this one person have overt advantage, coercive
Well,
advantage?
what about an 18-year-old with a 15-year-old? I mean, come on, that's ridiculous.
That's so common.
To prosecute, yeah, it's a whole nother issue.
They do that though,
But
and then
yeah.
they label those kids sex offenders, the 18-year-old.
Yeah.
Which is
and they're-
insane, they're both young people.
About it. I love what you said about the end, about finding meaning in our current lives.
Yeah.
That's it.
To live on.
I like it.
But, my barber, who's probably a wealthy man, he's probably a millionaire, the barber millionaire, he said, Norm, because he owns he owns the building and the apartment that he lives
Good
above.
Lord.
He owns the building he works in, he rents out 2 other storefronts.
He does a nice
As
job,
well.
Norm, yeah.
He does a good
And
job.
he says, when I leave, I'm just gonna let the city take it. I'm gonna just I don't have a will. They'll just seize my property. I'm just gonna let them seize everything.
What's he
And
talking
I don't wanna
about?
worry about it. He's a gay man, he doesn't have any offspring, his parents will be
Why
gone.
doesn't he leave it to gay
I said, why don't you
causes?
donate it? I would say, create a will and donate everything to charity. He said, nah, I just let them, I paid enough taxes, I'll let them take care of it. He said he didn't want to be hassled with all of the setting up the trust. or
Oh,
whatever.
come on,
I
it's
know
not that hard, we've done it.
And maybe there's some other reason that he's not telling me, but
Yeah.
all I'm trying to say is that are we, by focusing on legacy, are we really still just acting out of fear of our mortality? That is, we're not going to be around one way or another to enjoy this so-called legacy that we're leaving. So what is it that is feeding our desire, to leave a legacy? Is it rational to even worry about it?
Well, some people would say it isn't, but I think it is. I think that, you wanna, you've accumulated this money or inherited it or whatever, and I think you wanna leave it to who you want or what cause you want to leave it to. I mean, that's normal, I would think, isn't it?
But
I mean, I wouldn't
is
let
there-
the state take my money, I'll tell you that,
Yeah, but so your reward in doing this would have to be in the current life.
Well, yeah, the thought
There's
of
no-
that you're taking care
So,
of this person
so you're
or
going through
cause.
life, and every so often you're thinking, oh, isn't this wonderful, I'm leaving this legacy.
Yeah,
And then you go on to your life, and then you think about it again, and
Yeah.
maybe a few days you know that you're dying, and you're thinking about it again,
Yeah.
right? So it's just sort of
yeah, it's kind of an illusion.
a way to say, I feel good.
But the institution or the person that gets it will be very happy, and at least they'll think well of you for a few minutes until they start
Yeah.
spending it.
Yeah.
They're
Because-
not gonna remember you forever.
No,
Because another outcome.
especially when those people die.
Yes, yeah,
In
when
turn,
those
when
people
those
die.
people in turn
Yeah.
die.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
we will be
But
forgotten.
still, I mean, it's a nice thing to do, I think.
But another way, and I'm not advocating this way, because that's not the way I'm living, but it's just like absolutely no care about legacy at all. That living in the present means that you have no interest in thinking about what it'll be like without you there. Without, what are people gonna say when you're gone?
Okay.
That not having any interest at all means that you're not even worried about your legacy. You might want to write a great book just because you love writing, and that book will, outlive you, but that would only be the offset or the after effect of having this moment, this present moment of enjoyment.
Okay,
So that may be another, I think that's equally valid,
sure.
because we're not going to be around to enjoy anything
right.
that we're saying, oh, isn't this great, I'm leaving all this stuff. You're still not going to know when you're gone.
Turn this off.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.